here from Hobby Craft. We are working on some projects that are on the Mayco website under the projects heading on their website. It is one of thousands of projects that are on there, and what we're doing at the moment is having a look at what those projects are and switching them up a little bit and putting them onto different shapes of bisque. So giving you some ideas and some inspiration on how that fantastic idea can be transferred onto things that you actually already have in your studio using the products that you already have. So I was looking at an awesome astronaut vase. And I loved it very much, the whole look of it, very retro, very funky. And I was thinking for a lot of our students that are going back to university in September, I know I'm a little bit early of that in this year, but always it's such a nice thing, and I just thought that it sort of covered quite a lot of age groups. So I wanted to show you how I did it. Now, I've got a little bit of a Blue Peter moment because I've got some things that I've already done, and I will explain how I've changed it. So this particular vase is painted inside with stroke and coat so that it's all waterproof and you can use it as a vase. And then the outside is also painted with stroke and coat, but the visor of the spaceman or the astronaut is using a jungle gem. So it's using the Purple Rain CG1006. So it's one of the new ones, and it's really, really nice. It's on a pale purple background, and it has specks of darker purple and white, and then an even darker tiny speck on it. So it's really, really lovely and has a lot of depth and is really beautiful. So we are going to be doing this particular astronaut not on a vase but on a bowl. And so here's one that I've done earlier. That's my Blue Peter moment. And I've drawn the astronaut in, and I've literally coloured him in. I've used the instructions here on the project worksheet, and I have filled in the parts with colour. My problem is that on the visor I need to use a jungle gem. And we know that jungle gems do not do well, and they are not dinnerware safe inside of a product that we're going to be using. So we're going to mimic how to make this a food safe item using the same kind of look that we have from the jungle gem. And then I'm going to show you how to put colour on the outside of the bowl, and then we're going to use the jungle gem on the outside. So if you don't have that particular jungle gem, you certainly can produce this particular project. And if you do have the jungle gem, you can make it a utilitarian product by putting it on the outside. So, a utility, I should say. So, I'll show you how I first did it. So with the project, when you print it off, you get the template. And so with this particular template, I am using the clay carbon paper. So the clay carbon paper can be white or it's yellow, and there's a right side and a wrong side. So where there is printing, make sure that that is upright, and it will be written Hobby Craft on the yellow paper. I've made mine a bit smaller so it fits inside the bowl. So if you're going to chop it up, then do make a mark on it so that you can see which is the uppermost side of the paper, because one side you can see here, you can see the outline. I've done 3 bowls with this particular astronaut on there, and you can use it over and over again. So the first thing I did was I made my template a bit smaller, so I cut that up, and I'm doing it inside a bowl. So I'm not making it incredibly easy for myself, but it's not also impossible. So you can see that my template is sitting inside the bowl, and I'm happy where it's going to be sat, and I put my thumb on a piece that I'm not going to draw over, and then I slide my clay carbon paper underneath like that. So I have a sandwich of pottery, clay carbon paper, and then my image. And now I'm going to take just a biro, and I'm going to draw over the outline of the astronaut inside the bowl. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. I'll do a few bits, not everything. And you can see that transferred on is the line that has been made by the carbon paper. What I would suggest is you do all of the lines, keeping your finger tightly on the paper. Lift it up and have a peep by keeping your finger tightly on the paper still. So if you've forgotten somewhere, you can go back in and carry on drawing. If you try and match up lines after you've taken everything off, you'll find it very difficult to get everything back where it should be. So that's how you transfer an image onto your ceramics. Then when you have the image in there, that's when you're going to start adding your color. So with these larger projects, you do the background color first, and then you go in and you do your details. And these ones haven't been finished yet because there's some black outlining to do on top of it, so that it has all of the pipe work on his suit and all the lines on it. But I wanted to show you how I'm going to add the color onto his visor. So I have the color chip chart for Purple Rain, and I can see what's in it, because of course in the jar we can't always see what color those extra bits of glass are. So open her up, and Jungle Gems are fantastic. They are a glaze and they have extra bits of glass added into them. Each one has a different background color. Some of them are clear, some of them have a background color to themselves, and then they have complementary or completely contrasting chips of glass added in, so that in the kiln they will melt and they will pop and they will make all sorts of different fantastic effects. Now that glass is slightly heavier than the glaze, so it likes to live at the very bottom. So you need to take a brush. I'm going to use one that I'm not going to use for painting, and I give it a good stir so you can hear it's quite gritty. Then I close the jar up and I give it a shake. So on the lid of my jar now are all the bits of glass, not all of them, but the ones that I'm going to use are sitting there ready to go. I'm a bit preemptive with those because we're just going to do the inside of the bowl where the visor is to mimic that. Now, I know that there's purple, different shades, and I know there's a white in there. So I'm going to take the back of a paintbrush and I'm going to dip it into the glaze, the stroke and coat, and I'm using a couple of purples. So when you're doing your project and you are making it fit with your studio and the colors that you've got in your studio, it can be any one of the purples that you've got, any one of the grays that you might have, whatever that might be. So you can stick to directions, but also feel free to make it fit with your studio. The idea of these particular projects that we're doing is to show that you can download something, print it off of the Mayco website, and be making it within the hour, within the minute, so that it's things that you've already got in your studio that you just need to apply. So I'm going to do some highlights with some white on his visor. I've used the back of a paintbrush to do the dots that are going to mimic the Purple Rain inside. And then I'm going to add, while I'm in here doing all of my white things, I can go in with the white and I make some starbursts with the white, give them a chance to dry, and then put another layer or so onto those. So make it really look like he's out on a spacewalk. Back of the paintbrush doing those dots. So we're going on to a very dark purple. In fact, this is one of the new ones from last year, Great Expectations 104, which is really a dark purple. So those white stars aren't going to show up just by themselves. So I want to put 2 or 3 layers, 3 preferably, on top of those so that it really does show up. So that's making the inside of it dinnerware safe. And then I thought, why don't we try some different ways of adding colour to the outside so that we can add the Jungle Gems to the outside. So this particular one is using a banding wheel. The banding wheel has the ball bearings underneath, so the wheel can spin quite freely. They're a great addition to your studio. Get one, just have one, and you can always find a use for it, just for doing edging or for actually working on a piece, being able to see the different sides. We're going to use it for this particular project so that I can get paint on quickly and evenly, more importantly. So for this, I'm going to use a nice broad fan brush. This particular one is a natural hair one. You can use some of the new mop brushes that we've got. Anything that's lovely and big and holds the glaze. And I load up this brush till it's almost dripping off, but it's not quite dripping off because this is just our first layer that's going to be going on. So I've wet my brush beforehand, which is conditioning the brush so that it's able to take on the paint. And I'm just going to put this on. So I'm not spinning it like a wild thing, but it just makes it nice and easy to apply the color nice and evenly. So I'm putting that on. This particular color is exactly what I've got on the inside. So the inside has the astronaut on it, and it's got a lower part of the bowl is in black. So I'm going to add that in. And then the upper part of the bowl towards his head is dark purple. And then across him in the back are his fantastic clouds. So they're using, what's it called? It's got a lovely name, Making Me Blush, which is a really soft peach. Really a lovely, lovely peach. And it's also with lavender, which is a really soft purple. So you've got these very dark colors contrasting with very light ones, and so it makes a really interesting use of the colors. And what I'm doing is I'm using the black on the bottom part of this bowl, and I'm blending it in using a little bit of water, but also using quite a lot of paint to build up that join. So you will have this quite a lot in your studios, that people will always want to blend their colors. How do I do that best? You need to put down your color first and then build up your layers. And as you build up your layers, pick up 2 colors on your brush and work it in. There's absolutely no shortcut for a little bit of hard work, and those 3 layers that are going on just need to be worked with these lovely broad brush strokes. And you'll be able to see that that causes a really nice ombre effect. All right, so that's done there. And then onto that, I will add the Making Me Blush and the lavender to make the clouds, because on the project sheet, that's exactly what I used to make these clouds behind the astronaut. And so I'm mimicking the outside. Well, I'm mimicking the inside on the outside. Now, top tip, you've probably worked it out already. This bowl is upside down, so I want to make sure that I am painting my clouds the right way up. So take care, think how you want to paint them, because you don't want them to be like, I don't know, like a cartoon cloud too much, because otherwise they look like they're in Toy Story, you know, on the wallpaper. So you don't want that, because these are cosmic clouds. These are not just any old cloud. So they're going to need quite a few layers, but if you have a look at what I'm painting on, they are fluffy. Maybe they are a little bit Toy Story clouds. But what you want to achieve is 3 good layers of this Making Me Blush, but it gets some of the black showing through towards the bottom. So I've painted that on there, and I'm going to let that dry for a little while, and we'll come back to it. Right, the next treatment I wanted to give a bowl was putting some stamps on. So the bottom of this banding wheel is dark purple, and all my edges are already dark purple, so it's only going to add to them. And I found this fantastic rubber mat, and this is a Mayco product, and it's got these sort of retro squares, sort of very space mission to Mars kind of squares. And what I'm going to do with them is I'm going to use a sponge on a stick. It's nice and broad, and I'm going to load it up with the dark purple again, with this Grape Expectations, and I'm going to tap it onto the rubber mat. Now I'm taking care to just pounce it on so that it sits on the highest part of this mat. I don't want to squish lots of paint onto the lower part of the mat, because when I apply it to the bisque, that part of the mat will transfer its colour on, and then we won't see our amazing retro squares. Now, of course, my mat is straight and my bowl is not, so I'm going to pat it on and I'm going to move it around and I'm going to reapply my colour, and I will show you how awesome it looks. So it's quite relaxed. I'm not trying to get anything absolutely straight, but already have a look at that, how that shows up this cool pattern. So not for this one, but there's all sorts of other mats that are wood grain and meadows and feathers and amazing texture. So they're not just used in the wet clay. If you're doing clay in your studio, they are fantastic for that, add so much interest, but they definitely work brilliantly on bisque. You can see it's taking minutes to cover this bowl with this funky pattern. There we go. And one last one, and then I'll fill the gap in. And there we've got it. So that looks great. I've got a gap, but I've got a bit of paint somewhere. I might just do like this. Catch that little corner. And this one. Fantastic. Right, so I've got quite a lovely pattern all over. Right, put that to one side, and then you guessed it, I'm going in with my clouds again, just because they're the height of interest and they've got a bit of pattern to them. So big fluffy astro clouds. Okay, right, so that's one layer on that one. There we go, so that's done there. Okay, what I haven't done is I haven't made it food safe in there, so I'm going back in with my coloured dots, and then I'll show you those. So this idea on the visor is that it is mirroring the stars that the astronaut is seeing out in space. So we want to make them as whimsical as possible. Imagine if they were all tiny planets. So a nice highlight on there. And those are the details that I've added onto there. All right, so that's that. So for the last bowl, I'm going to decorate this using bubbles. If you haven't done bubbles before, it's really cool. I have in here a mixture of washing up liquid, water and glaze, and I've got 3 parts, water, glaze and soap, the same amount. If you want to use less water and less soap, that's fine, just don't use less glaze. I didn't have a straw to hand, so I've taken the center of a biro and I'm using that in a shallow pot. So I'm going to blow bubbles into the mixture and let it all cascade out and go onto the pot. So we'll see you in a minute. Let's see. There you go. Got all my bubbles on. You don't want to move it now, you just leave it to one side and let your bubbles pop quietly away. Right, that allows the bisque to absorb any of the paint that is in the bubble and showing all of those lovely details in what you've just blown over. So if you ever do this in your studio, it is a fantastic thing to do. Make sure your customers a little bit away from their friends' pots, because as the bubbles come through they pop and sparkle everywhere, and you don't want somebody who's painting something that is very pale, covered with the splishes and splashes of somebody's dark purple bubbles. Anyway, so I will let that do its thing over there, and in the meantime we will come back and revisit our ceramics here that we have done the clouds on. So on the inside here, this is where it's wet, but here you can see that I have got, I'm going to add some water so you can have a look at what I've got underneath there. So I've got the lavender, I'm not adding any colour, this is just water. I've got the lavender and I've got the Making Me Blush, and the clouds are slightly darker towards the bottom of the cloud. So I'm going to do that on here. So I've got the Making Me Blush, and I'm going to put a second coat on because I already did one coat, and while that second coat is wet I'm going to add a little bit of black to it, which looks a bit harsh and striking, but I've got it there and it's nice and wet. I'm going to add some water and I'm going to blend that in so the bottom of that cloud is slightly darker than the top of it. So it's very hard to see because it's a very pale colour on top of the white there. And so I'm going to leave that to dry for a minute, and while I'm doing that I'm going to put, this is a bit clearer, the little line of black. So this is really showing up because it's on a black background itself actually, because it's the bottom of this particular bowl. I'm going to use a little bit of tissue because I've been overexcited with my water, so it's spilling out a little bit. And you can see there I've got a lower part of my cloud is dark. That's just adding a little bit of interest to that. And then I'm going to go in with my pre-prepared, give it an extra little shake, and I've got my jungle gems there with my lovely crystals sitting in the top, and with a clean brush I'm just going to move those onto a tile. So I'm currently working on some wet paint, so I don't want to pick up any of that black or any of that stroke and coat at all and add it to my jar of jungle gems. So I'm going to then paint this all over this cloud to give that amazing interest of soft purple with specks of darker purple in two different shades and flashes of white. And I'm going to add that to this cloud. Now, two things to note. On my tile, it allows me to catch all the lovely crystals that are there, sitting there quietly in the glaze, so I can get all the good ones. What I would suggest is putting the bigger crystals towards the top of the cloud, because that's the top of the bowl, and leaving the smaller crystals to the bottom, because jungle gems are very mobile. So in the kiln, when they're doing a glaze firing, those crystals are going to melt, and if you're very heavy at the bottom, then they are going to run, and you do not want to stick your beautiful piece to the bottom of your kiln or onto a kiln shelf. So that then adds all of that interest. So I should have said, before I put these crystal gems on, these jungle gems, I painted the background with white stroke and coat 16, because I can't dip this now into the glaze bucket. So there's plenty of glaze on there, and if I was worried if I'd forgotten to paint it, then I could just take a little pot of that dipping glaze, and with a brush I can paint it on over. But discard that glaze then, because you might have picked up some of the jungle gem crystals onto your brush and you don't want them floating around in your bucket. So that's worth remembering. Do not dip the jungle gems into your bucket, because one might get loose and then you don't want to find that in the middle of a very precious baby's footprint if you've done some prints that week, and it will then always find its way to the one place you don't want it to be. So these are all then dry footed and put in the kiln and then fired. So I wanted to show you some surface decoration, how we can make a project that might not be easily transferable onto ware that we can use every day, and we've been able to use all of the products. Even if we didn't have jungle gems, we could still make an amazing project. So have a look at the website, go to Mayco. Their project page is absolutely full of amazing ideas, and try it on a different shape. It always will give you so much inspiration. So thank you so much, and I enjoy showing you these awesome things, and I'd love to share them with you again. Bye bye.